In 2021, something unexpected happened. China and Iran signed a sweeping 25-year cooperation pact worth hundreds of billions of dollars. But the biggest surprise wasn't just the size of the deal, it was the location that grabbed attention: Gosham Island. Most people have never heard of it. Gosham is a dry, rocky island off Iran's southern coast, remote, windblown, and until recently mostly ignored. But now, it's being turned into a $500 billion energy and infrastructure hub. Why? Because Gosham isn't just some dusty outpost. It sits right next to one of the most critical oil routes on Earth, the Strait of Hormuz. This isn't just construction, it's a strategic move. For China, Gosham could help secure future energy needs. For Iran, it's a lifeline, an escape route from economic isolation. And for the rest of the world, this could be a warning sign that the balance of power over oil and global influence is shifting. So here's the big question. Why is China pouring money into a remote Iranian island? And what does that reveal about the new power struggle in the world's most volatile region? Let's break it down, starting with where Gosham is and why it matters so much. To understand Gosham's importance, look at a map. The island sits just northwest of the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway linking the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea. At its tightest, it's only 33 kilometers wide, but it handles close to 20% of global oil shipments. Control this strait, and you control a massive chunk of the world's energy flow. Now back to Gosham. It's Iran's biggest island, spanning about 1,490 square kilometers, roughly the size of Los Angeles. It stretches over 100 kilometers, covered in dry hills and plains. Vegetation is sparse, and the climate is harsh. Average temps sit around 27 degrees Celsius, and annual rainfall is barely 200 millimeters, about the same as the Sahara. There's no lush farmland here. The island has a small population, around 100,000, many of whom depend on fishing or small-scale trade. But despite the tough terrain, Gosham has one unmatched asset location. It's like a lookout tower over the world's busiest oil lane. Standing on its shores, you can monitor every major tanker moving through the strait. That's why armies, empires, and now global powers have always been drawn to it. It's not about what's on the island, it's about what moves around it. To many, Gosham may seem like a recent strategic discovery, but it's been a hidden player in global trade and politics for centuries. Long before oil ruled the world, Gosham's waters were alive with commerce. Ships from India, Arabia, Africa, and even China used these routes to move valuable goods: spices, silk, ivory, and incense. The Strait of Hormuz was one of the busiest maritime corridors in the ancient world. Even legendary Chinese explorer Zheng He mapped the island, then known as Kurumis, during his voyages in the 1400s. He wasn't just chasing glory, he was connecting China to Indian Ocean trade, and Gosham was a key checkpoint. But trade always invites conflict. Whoever controls Gosham controls access to the Persian Gulf. That's made it a prized outpost for centuries. Colonial powers, rival empires, and modern militaries have all recognized its importance. Think of it this way: if the world's oil flow were a faucet, the Strait of Hormuz is the tap, and Gosham is the hand on the valve. So the China-Iran project of today isn't the beginning of Gosham's story. It's just the latest chapter in a long saga. And now, in an era defined by energy wars and great power rivalries, the island's strategic value is bigger than ever. To understand China's interest in this dusty island, you need to grasp one thing. China depends on oil, and most of it comes from the Middle East. Every day, China consumes over 10 million barrels of oil. But here's the problem. Around 75% of it is imported, and nearly a quarter of those imports flow through the Strait of Hormuz, just beside Gosham. That makes China's energy supply dangerously fragile. One conflict, blockade, or naval standoff near the strait could choke China's economy, like cutting oxygen to a flame. So China is acting, both defensively and offensively. Over the past decade, it's been quietly building a network of ports, refineries, and pipelines to reduce reliance on a single route. It leased Gwadar Port in Pakistan, it invested in Kyaukphyu Port in Myanmar, it even built the China-Myanmar oil pipeline, a strategic way to bypass the risky Strait of Malacca altogether. All of this falls under the umbrella of the Belt and Road Initiative. China's massive global infrastructure plan that connects Asia to Africa, Europe, and beyond. And Gosham fits perfectly into this vision. By building ports, fuel storage, and refineries on the island, China locks in an energy base near the Persian Gulf, without having to depend solely on vulnerable sea lanes. If tensions rise with the United States, or if Western navies pressure Chinese shipping, Gosham becomes a fallback, a secure node in the global oil web. It's a strategic insurance policy. Iran has its own motivations, and they go far beyond barrels of oil. For Iran, the partnership with China isn't just economic, it's a lifeline. Over the past decade, Iran's economy has been hit hard by repeated waves of United States and European sanctions. These weren't limited to officials or military targets. They froze Iran out of the global financial system, blocked international trade, and scared off foreign investment. The result? Iran's GDP plummeted from about $640 billion in 2012 to less than $240 billion by 2020. A staggering collapse. But here's the irony. Iran sits on one of the largest oil and gas reserves in the world. It's like owning a gold mine, but not being allowed to sell the gold. Even worse, when Iran does manage to sell crude oil, it often lacks the modern refineries to turn it into usable fuel. So it exports raw oil, then imports gasoline, a costly, frustrating paradox. That's where China comes in. In 2021, the two nations inked a sweeping 25-year strategic deal, valued at around $400 billion. It covers nearly 100 major initiatives: ports, railroads, telecommunications, and crucially, oil infrastructure. At the heart of it, Gosham Island. For Iran, Gosham represents more than strategy, it's survival. With Chinese help, Iran can build storage, refine its own oil, and slowly claw its way back into global markets, on its own terms. This partnership sends a message: Iran doesn't need the West to thrive. With China's investment, technology, and political support, it's betting on a new direction, eastward. But Iran wants more than just to survive sanctions. Iran isn't satisfied with pumping oil. It wants to build, to become an industrial power that makes and exports real products. Unlike many oil-rich neighbors, Iran actually has the foundation to do it. The country manufactures cars, ships, drones, missiles, even parts for aircraft. It has advanced nuclear capabilities, a sizable tech sector, and a population of over 80 million, many of them young and highly educated. Iran's not just rich in oil, it's rich in human capital. Compare that to places like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. Wealthy, yes, but still dependent on imports and foreign labor for basic industry. Iran, having lived under sanctions for decades, has learned to produce things from scratch. Now, with China's help, it wants to scale that up. China brings more than funding, it brings full-scale industrial planning. Rail networks, smart ports, telecom systems, and refinery complexes. The kind of national infrastructure that turns oil wealth into long-term power. And they can build it fast. Iran hopes Gosham will be the prototype, a testbed for a broader transformation. The goal is to move from a raw exporter to a value-adding economy that competes globally. This isn't just economics, it's about power, self-reliance, and regional influence. Because if Iran becomes the first true industrial power in the Islamic world, it changes everything. Gosham Island is only a piece of something far larger, a growing alliance that could reshape the Middle East. Backed by China, Iran is positioning itself as more than an oil state. It's becoming a rising industrial and geopolitical force, right as traditional power centers are showing cracks. Iran already holds influence through the so-called Shia Crescent, a network of allies from Iraq and Syria to Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen. It wields power through parliaments, militias, and military bases. Now look around. Turkey is distracted by domestic instability. Saudi Arabia, despite its wealth, still depends on the West for weapons and technical know-how. Israel, while powerful, remains isolated in the Muslim world and faces resistance in every major regional conflict. Now add China to Iran's side. With vast financial reach, global trade links, and no hesitation to bypass Western sanctions, China is the perfect partner. Together, they're building infrastructure, energy networks, military cooperation, and trade routes that bypass the traditional Western-led world order. If this partnership succeeds, it could create a new axis of power, linking Beijing's economic muscle with Tehran's geography and influence. This wouldn't just challenge US dominance, it would undermine the entire foundation of Western influence in the region. So the question becomes, what happens to the old world order when new powers decide to build one of their own? If you found this breakdown helpful, hit like and subscribe for more deep dive analysis on global power dynamics, economic shifts, and geopolitical strategies. Drop a comment. Do you think this China-Iran alliance will last? Or will outside pressure tear it apart? Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.